She is history's ultimate villain. For nearly 3,000 years, her name has been weaponized, a symbol of deceit, malicious ambition, and religious corruption. In the text of the Hebrew Bible, she is the archetype of the wicked queen, a foreign temptress who led Israel astray. But when we strip away centuries of theological bias and look at the hard archaeological evidence, a far more complex figure emerges. This isn't just a story about an evil queen. This is a masterclass in ancient geopolitics, cultural warfare, and the brutal reality of how history is written by the victors. This is the real story of Jezebel, the Phoenician princess who nearly rewrote the destiny of the Middle East. To understand Jezebel, we have to understand the world of the 9th century BCE. The northern kingdom of Israel is a rising regional power, but it is trapped in a dangerous neighborhood. To the northeast sits the aggressive empire of Aram Damascus. To the west, the wealthy maritime superpower of the Mediterranean Phoenicia. King Omride of Israel, and later his son Ahab, realized that survival requires an alliance. They turned to Baal, the king of the Sidonians and ruler of Tyre. Baal is no ordinary king. Ancient historian Josephus records that he was a priest of Asgard who seized the throne in a bloody coup. He is fabulously wealthy, politically astute, and fiercely religious. To seal this vital economic and military pact, Baal sends his daughter Jezebel. She arrives in Samaria not as a submissive foreign bride, but as an ambassador of a sophisticated maritime empire. She brings with her a vast entourage of scribes, diplomats, and priests. Her mission? To ensure Israel remains firmly locked within the Phoenician sphere of influence. The marriage is a brilliant geopolitical success. Wealth pours into Israel. The biblical text itself complains about Ahab's ivory house, a historical detail confirmed by archaeologists who have dug up hundreds of exquisite Phoenician ivory carvings in Samaria. Israel is modernizing. It is becoming cosmopolitan, but this rapid globalization triggers a fierce domestic backlash. As part of her diplomatic freedom, Jezebel builds a temple to Baal Melkart, the patron deity of Tyre, right in the Israelite capital. In Phoenician culture, the queen was often the chief patroness of the state cult. Jezebel isn't trying to destroy Israel's God Yahweh. In her mind, she's practicing standard ancient diplomacy, introducing her God alongside the local ones to bless the alliance. But to the conservative rural factions of Israel, this is an existential threat. They see their traditional agrarian identity being swallowed by foreign elite wealth and pagan syncretism. The voice of this radical resistance is Elijah, the Tishbite. Elijah doesn't see a political compromise, he sees a spiritual war. It is an unstoppable force hitting an immovable object, the absolute monarchy of Phoenicia versus the unyielding prophetic tradition of Israel. The tension escalates when a catastrophic drought grips the region. In the ancient world, weather was the ultimate proof of divine authority. Baal was the god of storms and rain. Yahweh was the creator of all things, Whoever could break the drought would control the narrative. The Book of Kings frames the famous showdown on Mount Carmel as a supernatural duel. Elijah challenges 450 prophets of Baal to call down fire from heaven. The Phoenician priests chant, dance, and ritualistically cut themselves, but the sky remains silent. Then Elijah steps up. With a single prayer, fire erupts, consuming Elijah's water-drenched altar. The psychological impact on the crowd is immediate. The narrative has shifted. But historians note the political purge that followed this religious event. Elijah orders the crowd to slaughter all 450 prophets of Baal at the Kishon River. This wasn't just a religious victory, it was a brutal, politically motivated execution of Jezebel's top diplomatic and administrative staff. When Ahab reports the massacre to Jezebel, she doesn't panic. She reacts with the icy resolve of a ruler. She sends Elijah a direct death threat. Her words are a masterclass in political intimidation, and she writes, "So may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." She doesn't send assassins in the dark. She breaks his morale publicly, and it works. Elijah, the man who just called down fire from heaven, breaks and flees for his life into the deep southern desert. If Mount Carmel represents the religious clash, the incident of Naboth's vineyard reveals the clash of legal systems. King Ahab wants to buy a vineyard adjacent to his palace to use as a vegetable garden. He offers the owner, Naboth, a fair price or a better vineyard. But Naboth refuses, citing religious law, and he says to Ahab, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." In Israel, the king was not above the law. Land belonged to Yahweh, held in trust by families. It could not be permanently sold. Ahab understands this constraint and sulks like a petulant child. But Jezebel comes from Phoenicia, an absolute autocracy where the king's word is the law. She looks at her husband and asks a chilling question: "Do you now govern Israel?" Jezebel takes matters into her own hands, exposing the deep divide between foreign autocracy and local law. She writes letters in Ahab's name, seals them with his royal signet ring, and commands the local elders to frame Naboth for treason and blasphemy. Naboth is executed. The state confiscates his land. By bypassing Israelite constitutional law, Jezebel cements her reputation among the populace, not just as a religious heretic, but as a tyrant who treats free Israelite citizens like expendable subjects. For decades, the Omride dynasty holds power through sheer military might. But anger is boiling beneath the surface. The military is exhausted from endless border wars. The religious conservatives want blood, and the old tribal elites want their power back. The spark is lit when a charismatic, fanatical military commander named Jehu launches a bloody coup d'etat. Jehu rides to the royal estate at Jezreel. He assassinates Jezebel's son, King Joram, throwing his body onto the very plot of land stolen from Naboth. The revolution is swift, bloody, and absolute. Jehu then rides his chariot straight towards the palace gates to eliminate the matriarch herself. Jezebel knows her son is dead. She knows the army has mutinied. She knows she has minutes to live. A lesser person would flee, hide, or beg for mercy. But Jezebel is the daughter of the king of Tyre. She chooses to die as a queen. She paints her eyes, fixes her hair, and puts on her royal robes. This wasn't an act of seduction, as later traditions falsely claimed. It was an act of supreme political defiance. She was wearing her royal armor. She steps to the window and looks down at her executioner. She mocks him, calling him Zimri, the name of a notorious Israelite traitor who ruled for only 7 days before dying in agony. She's telling Jehu that he is nothing but a temporary usurper. Jehu looks up, furious, and shouts to the palace staff, "Who is on my side?" Her own court officials reading the political room betray her. They hurl her out of the window. Her blood splatters across the palace walls. Jehu drives his chariot directly over her broken body, stamping out the Phoenician line. Jehu enters the palace, eats a victory feast, and casually orders, "See now to this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." But when the soldiers go outside, they find almost nothing left. Just as the prophet Elijah had predicted years earlier, the feral dogs of the city had devoured her flesh. All that remained was her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands. Jezebel was erased from history as a leader and rewritten as a monster. The biblical writers used her horrific end to validate their theological victory. For millennia, her name became an insult, a weapon used to demonize powerful, independent women who stepped outside of their prescribed roles. But history is rarely black and white. From a geopolitical perspective, Jezebel was an incredibly effective, fiercely loyal ambassador who fought ruthlessly to protect her empire's alliance and her cultural heritage in a brutal, uncompromising world. She played the Game of Thrones with absolute conviction and paid the ultimate price. Was Jezebel truly a monster, or was she simply a powerful queen on the losing side of a historic cultural revolution? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this cinematic dive into biblical history, please consider liking the video and subscribing to Bible Analytica. And I'll see you in the next episode.